Okay, we ready for this one? Okay, this is an interesting one. Marriage is to be between one man and one woman. Neither is it lawful for any man to have more than one wife, nor for any woman to have more than one husband at the same time. Marriage was ordained for the mutual help of husband and wife, for the increase of mankind with a legitimate issue, and of the church with a holy seed, and for preventing of uncleanness. It is lawful for all sorts of people to marry who are able with judgment to give their consent. Yet it is the duty of Christians to marry only in the Lord, and therefore such as profess the true Reformed religion should not marry with infidels or papists or other idolaters, neither should such as are godly be unequally yoked by marrying with such as are notoriously wicked in their life or maintain damnable heresies. Marriage ought not to be within the degrees of consanguinity or affinity forbidden by the word, nor can such incestuous marriages ever be made by any law of man or consent of parties, so as those persons may live together as man and wife. Adultery or fornication committed after a contract being detected before marriage giveth such occasion to the innocent party to dissolve that contract. In the case of adultery after marriage, it is lawful for the innocent party to sue out of a divorce, and after the divorce to marry another, as if the offending party were dead. All right, so a lot here covers just for the theology of marriage, grounds for divorce, and so forth. Now, this next slide actually, it was posted by someone that I know. I haven't talked to this person in a very, very long time. In fact, we're not even really in touch anymore, but my wife is still Facebook friends with this person. And she commented that this person had posted this. It was kind of disturbing because this person, we used to go to church together. Anyways, so this is what this person said. I spent the first 35 years of my life thinking that every word of the Bible was given directly by God and that it all worked together to form one coherent message, that it defined right and wrong for everything, despite knowing that it was an entire library of books written over probably 4,000 years and that it was full of things that Christians don't know or don't talk about. I have since admitted that not only are there inconsistent views of marriage in it, but views we know are fundamentally wrong. As a Christian, I somehow trusted gay marriage was wrong, even though I had read through the whole Bible multiple times, some of it in the original Hebrew, and I was well acquainted with all the weirdness. If we are going to talk about sexuality, marriage, in the Bible, we need to admit that A, it's complicated, and B, it evolved over time. Marriage and sexuality in the Old Testament and New Testament are very different for obvious reasons. They need to be different today than they were when the Roman Empire was a thing. For obvious reasons, most of all, it's not meant to be a mold we squish people into, especially when the mold doesn't look like the entire Bible, but one slice that we are comfortable with. So I went back and read it after my wife mentioned it, and she's like, don't comment, because I wanted to. And I'm like, I'm not. I did and I didn't. I mean, part of me wanted to, but I really don't have any connection with this person anymore. There's just really, it's saddened me that that someone who sat under good teaching would come to this point. There's a lot about it that just, it's like, you sat under good teaching, you must not have absorbed it, because there's so many things, so many holes in this whole line of reasoning here. So obviously the confession differs with the ideas espoused in that post. A, it's not complicated, though sin does complicate everything, and that's usually what this person was referring to is, look at all the complicated stuff here. Yeah, well, sin does that, yes, and God at His mercy at times did not deal with some of those issues right away, just like He does with us today. So, when you have, people having more than one wife, God didn't deal with that right away. It wasn't His original design, but He didn't deal with it right away. Later on He does, and what we see in Scripture is the foolishness of it, and how it just brings so much pain and destruction and hurt into these families when they live polygamous lives and that sort of thing. It was never God's design. So sin complicates everything. It did not evolve. It devolved, if anything. Polygamy and so forth was a distortion of the original design. Ray Ortlund says this: In fact, this is in one of the videos I posted on the syllabus, which I just posted on the other day. So I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it, but if you're doing everything last minute, you probably saw it. But if you did it all ahead of time, then you didn't see it because I just added it. But he says, marriage is not just one more mutation in the course of human social evolution. Marriage came down from above. It was not invented, it was not given, and we should revere marriage as a metaphor for the gospel. We must be faithful to marriage because it's a gospel issue. If we cave on marriage, we lose the gospel. So, and I think that's absolutely true, because marriage certainly has a bigger purpose than just simply how do people relate to each other. How do they make their cohabitation legal in the eyes of the state? And it's not really what it's about. It's about showing us a picture of who God is, but also a picture of what Christ has done for his bride. And so back to those sections there, that was just sort of a preface to our discussion. So the first section, the biblical view of marriage, is one man with one woman for life. That's the picture. We go all the way back to Genesis, that's the picture. Nothing complicated about that, right? I mean, did it evolve over time? Well, that's what we believe right now, and that's what Genesis teaches, right? So I don't see how anything evolved when what we did was really go back to the original design. And you see that being taught in the New Testament as well, as Jesus says, he quotes right from those passages. Marriage was given for the production of holy children for the church and the prevention of immorality as well. So, Paul says it's better to marry than burn with passion. It's because of sexual immorality, the inability of people to control themselves. Is best that every man have his own wife and every woman have her own husband. And also, when it talks about the production of holy children, so when believers have children, they're brought into the church. I want to say that's in some ways sort of like part of, expanding the kingdom, right? In a way. Also, anyone can marry on their informed consent. So it is speaking against, forced marriages, shotgun weddings, things like that. Arranged marriages. That sort of thing. So informed consent is very important. Yet it is the duty of Christians to marry in the Lord, not unequally yoked. So now it said there, only those who profess the Reformed religion. Okay, and we probably wouldn't take such a hard stance on that today, but I think that in those days, when there was so much tension, between all the different denominations, Roman Catholic, Reformed, Anglican, there was just so much tension. And as they saw it, when you have two people getting married who are very, different on their views, it's going to cause friction. It's going to cause problems as well in the marriage. I think, generally speaking, that can still be true. And so, because I've often thought about my kids and like, oh, are they going to marry a Baptist? I don't know. I'm kidding, but but if they know the Lord, that's all that matters. That's the most important thing is they know the Lord. And so that'd be fine with that, of course. That wouldn't be an issue. But certainly, the whole unequally yoked point is certainly very important. If somebody marries an unbeliever, someone who doesn't profess faith, that's going to cause issues. And, you probably have seen that, and, unequally yoked into that term kind of means, it's the yoke of the oxen, right? If they're not equally yoked, then they don't pull the same direction or the same, strength or whatever it might be. So it's counterproductive. They're working against each other, and that's the problem. And then incest is unlawful as well, not to mention gross. So it speaks against incest, and in the days of the monarchies and things where a lot of these people were all interrelated. They started getting deformities because they were so inbred. You can understand why they might have a comment about that when it was common in those times. And if adultery or fornication occurs, the innocent party has the right to sue for divorce and remarry as if the offending party were dead. Now, it actually speaks about even like the engagement period, okay? So if there is adultery during the engagement period, that they can break off the engagement. In our day, in our culture, that's not as scandalous to break off an engagement. It's not as like earth-shattering. But in that day, and also in Jesus' day, right? Because when Joseph found out Mary was pregnant, she's with child, he was going to divorce her quietly, but they weren't even really technically even married yet, right? It was really, they were kind of like betrothed. So he was going to break off the engagement, and that was a big deal. It was really as big of a deal as divorce. So that's why it speaks to both of those issues, but I didn't really include a whole lot about that in there because in our day, it's not as big of a deal, I guess. And then let's see, section 6. The only two grounds for divorce permitted in Scripture, as the confession states, are adultery and desertion. But in such cases, the persons concerned are not to be left to their own wills and discretion, but ought to bring such matters before the elders of the church. And I think that's really wise that they put that in there, because there's a tendency, and I've seen this happen in the past with people who kind of just make up their mind up. They're just going to do their thing, Well, he did this, and so I'm divorcing him, or she did this, and I'm divorcing her. No involvement from the church, no input, no what do you think, no counsel, no seeking direction from those who are over us in the Lord, and so it needs to be something that's that's dealt with inside the church family as well. So yeah, and on top of that, adultery and desertion should be interpreted broadly, I think, or could be interpreted broadly. For example, pornography addiction or inappropriate relationship with the opposite sex, fetishes, and so forth may be considered adultery. Desertion may be emotional, financial, sexual, as well as physical desertion. It's not just leaving the house, right? Desertion can come in many forms. Abuse may also be considered a form of desertion. And I say may because not all cases are equal. So you don't want to just have a very narrow little box. Okay, well, if it fits in this box, then it's an exception, or it's grounds, because sin doesn't just fit in a little box, and so I think that's really the main thing is, okay, both adultery and desertion would be, violations of the marriage covenant. They would be disruptions of that relationship, and you have to navigate each one of those case by case. So that's why I say may and put stars around it, because I just want to make it clear, that that these may apply in different ways depending on the circumstances. So, and the grounds need to be confirmed by the church, not by the individuals involved. So the church needs to be involved in that. So, and we've done that, and that's happened even here, where we've had couples who ended up getting divorced, and we're going to counseling, as we said, and then, even the counselor agreed that they thought that they had grounds to end the marriage, So, yeah. So it just depends on. I mean, I would never counsel someone to do it. I wouldn't say, "Hey, I think you need to get divorced." I don't feel like that's my plate. I don't feel like I can do that. But if someone says, "Do you think I have grounds to divorce?" I will tell them whether or not I think they do, or the elders together we would do that. So, yeah. Okay, and so any thoughts, questions, comments about marriage and divorce? I certainly think that in our day today, with marriage being redefined, this is an important topic for us to make sure we have nailed down and that we're clear on what marriage is. That's the most important thing in this section here. What is marriage?
I'm not sure if they were dealing with this issue then, but it's possible that they clarified that it's permissible for any any man and woman who are consenting to marry. And I think one of the things that they were also pointing to was different races. It's still still a taboo kind of a situation in a lot of places, and there. I think there might be good reasons for being careful in such cases because of differences of culture, just like the idea of a Baptist and a Presbyterian. There's differences of culture that will have to be navigated. It can make things hard, but that doesn't make it wrong.
Right. It doesn't make it wrong. Yeah. But it can make it difficult. I mean, and that's, I've had friends that got married that had very different views on things theologically, and they just clashed over it, about where to go to church, how to raise the kids, things like that. There was a lot of tension. So then you just have to be aware of that. And I'm not saying it can't work, or that's wrong, but it is still something to think about, So, yeah. And as far as the racist thing, so like going back to the Old Testament, that's where a lot of people go to talk about, how the Israelites were not supposed to marry anyone outside of Israel. And so a lot of people have taken that and run with it. Of course, the reason why it was because they'll make you worship your gods. Right. That's really what it was about. It wasn't really about race. It was about religion. It was about faith.
Right. Exactly.
So
I'm not sure that you could look at an Israelite and tell the difference between them and an Edomite.
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably not. Yeah, that's a good point.
As far not about skin color or the way their hair works or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
An ancestor of David.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The Book of Ruth shows that, that she was a convert to the true religion. Despite her Moabite ancestry, her Moabite background, that she was really an Israelite. So biology was not really the factor that they needed to focus on, or faith. Yeah, that's right. Very good.
You gotta be careful with the desertion aspect, don't you? Exactly.
Yes.
Considered physical. You start thinking emotional. Excuse me, it chokes me up.
It chokes you up.
You could really stretch that. He spends all his day on the computer or he reads
Right.
comic books all day. He's deserted me.
Right.
So
Oh,
it's
sure.
so important to bring it to the church.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
I'm
Yeah.
okay now.
Yeah, you're okay now. Yeah.
Swallowed wrong.
But you've heard these stories of women being physically assaulted by their husbands, and they bring it to the church and he goes, well, he didn't commit adultery, he hasn't left you, so you got to stay with him.
Yeah.
You hear the stories and you just go,
That's so narrowly defined, isn't it?
yeah, right. You want to avoid that because that's why I think we have to have some very soft edges to our terms, so that we don't box in the person.
And define what those edges are in each situation. That's where the struggle.
Right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. I think it just takes a lot of wisdom and prayer and just discernment. So, yeah. Any other thoughts about any of that? Okay.